Okay, so you have goals that you want to achieve. Maybe it's a personal goal, like working out 2 times a week, completing a marathon, learning German, or learning how to play the guitar. Maybe it's career oriented, like starting a business, getting a promotion, or hitting a certain salary milestone. Or maybe it's relationship centered. You want to be a better friend, parent, or partner. No matter what the goal is, or how small or large, the problem is whenever you make a commitment to something, you never follow through. I would like to offer you a tool that pretty much carried me throughout college. And if you learn how to use this tool, you'll be able to achieve any and every goal that you set your mind to. But first, I want to take a step back. You, like 90% of the population, like the feeling of control. And conversely, you don't like the feeling of being controlled. For example, imagine if every time you took a shower, there was a 50% chance that the water would completely cut out. Would be annoying, right? Imagine if school was random. Your high school teachers randomly decide which students are the smart ones and which are the dumb ones. You are the dumb one. The smart kids get one on one tutoring in all their classes, while you are prohibited from asking for help. The smart kids get straight A's on homework, group projects, exams, and essays. You struggle to pass your classes. Now, some may argue that school does bias certain people in certain ways, and that may be true, but that's not the point. The point is that life puts limits on us, and we do not like that. So there are two options. The first option is to accept it. Accept that some days you're not going to be able to take a shower. Accept that you're never going to be able to go to college. What's the outcome? Exactly what you just told yourself. You don't get to go to college and you smell bad. What's the second option? Change yourself in some way to influence the outcome. You think to yourself, there must be a reason why my shower is so unpredictable. You check your plumbing and realize that the pipe that connects the pressure switch to the pressure tank needs to be cleaned. So you clean it, and bang, no more drops in water pressure. The second example may be harder, but still doable. You don't have teachers at your school that can teach you? Find teachers somewhere else. Find YouTube videos explaining what electrons are. Prompt ChatGPT to walk you through this calculus problem. You get good enough grades in high school, and bang, you get offers from a few colleges. The second option puts you into the process of goal pursuits. Life is full of goal pursuing opportunities, and there are 3 steps to that. The first is proactivity. You are making the decision to do something about the situation. You decide that you can reach your goal. The second is choosing what path to take. And the third is walking on that path to reach your goal. Now, if you're content with the first option, acceptance, that is completely okay. But if you're not, then I might be able to help you with pursuing your goals. For now, I'm not going to focus on the first thing. Maybe that'll be another video. But what I can offer is a tool that makes it easier to reach your goals, a tool that helps you find the right path and turn that walk into a full on sprint. That tool is the CCKM system. Let's get into it. CCKM is a passion project that I've recently started. It stands for Cognitive Capability and Knowledge Management. The CCKM system is a system designed
to maximize learning efficiency by jointly optimizing the speed of knowledge acquisition, depth of conceptual understanding, and transferability of knowledge across domains through structured cognitive processes and concept-centered organization.
That was a lot of jargon that you don't need to know at the start. A way to think about it right now is a note-taking system on steroids. I'm going to tell you how to set it up. The first step is to install and familiarize yourself with Obsidian. Obsidian is a free note-taking and knowledge management app that I found works the best for CCKM. The core feature is the ability to connect or link one note to another, kind of like Wikipedia. It doesn't seem that interesting or useful, but it's very powerful. There's a ton of tutorials out there to familiarize yourself. I've linked some resources in the description, but you don't need to know much. To get started, just know the basics, like how to create new notes, folders, making subheaders, and links, and maybe learn a couple of shortcuts. Okay, so once you know the basics, let's move on to the setup. Okay, so the first thing that you're going to do is create a vault. I usually name mine main, and since I already have one, I'm going to name this one main2. And then select the folder where you want your vaults to be stored in. And then you're going to click create. Okay, now you should be in your main vaults. You can go ahead and get rid of the graph view tab, and then you can also delete the welcome note. And then you're going to want to go into settings. So go into settings, click on the community plugins tab, turn on community plugins, and you're going to want to install 2 plugins. The first one is going to be called Templater, and the second one is going to be called Data View. And then go back to community plugins and make sure those 2 are both enabled. Okay, so now you can exit out of settings, and what you want to do now is create 5 folders. And they're going to be called projects, references, notes, templates, and attachments. Put notes, attachments, and templates in the references folder. And then you're going to want to configure your attachments folder. So go back into settings, click on files and links. And then you're going to want to click on this box and select the option that says in the folder specified below. And then make sure that your subfolder name is attachments. If it does, then you're good to go. And then you can exit out of settings. And it looks like I accidentally made an attachments note, so I'm going to delete that and create an attachments folder and put that into references. Okay, there we go. Now you're going to create a new note and title it Template for HONs. Don't worry about what HONs stand for right now. We will get to that very soon. And then you're going to want to copy and paste the text in the file that I put in the description titled Template for HONs, and it should look like this. And then press enter so your cursor's out of the data view box, and it should look like this. Put that note in your templates folder. Okay, so now after you've done that, you want to go back into settings, go to templater, assign the templates folder location to your template folder, and then you're going to configure a hotkey for this template. So select your template for HONs note, click the plus icon, search for your note, and then you're going to want to select the one that says insert template for HONs. And then configure your hotkey. I like doing Command-Shift-Z for mine. And then you should be done. If you want to test your hotkey, create a new note and then title it HON space and then whatever you want. And then within that note, press your hotkey and you should see a data view box that looks like this. And then if you put your cursor in the data view box, it should say data view list from hashtag and then whatever you named your file. And that's it. You're done. Okay, so what did you actually just do? What you did was create the architecture for a concept-based knowledge management system. Here's how you use it. The first one is source capture. This is one of the ways that CCKM differentiates itself from other note-taking systems. You don't want to shorthand anything. As much as possible, copy the source verbatim. Now, disclaimer, this workflow is intended for personal and educational use only. So respect copyright in terms of use of any books, articles, or other materials. We'll see how to tackle different mediums a little later. But what this also means is creating subheaders for organization and copying down paragraphs and pictures. Remember, your goal is to preserve as much of the original source as is reasonably possible. The second workflow is concept annotation. The goal of this workflow is to identify relevant and useful concepts within your source. So when you identify a concept, you create a link to an HON object. So for example, I've identified that Markdown is a useful concept in this article. So what I do at the end of the paragraph is create a link. So I put 2 open double brackets and type HON in all caps, then space, and then the name of the concept, in this case, Markdown, and then 2 closed double brackets to complete my link. I like to call this process concept tagging, or C tagging for short. So I just C tagged Markdown, and maybe I'll C tag link and map to content too. For abbreviations, I like to type the unabbreviated version and then put the abbreviation after, like this. And you don't have to do every concept, just the ones that pop out to you. Okay, so what do you do after you're done C tagging your source? The next step is concept development. This is about improving your understanding of a concept and enriching it. Say I C tag the Zettelkasten method and notice that the article gives some facts about it and explains briefly how to use it. I'll put some of these facts and insights into my HON object. I don't know much about this method yet, so I'll put down what I think is important to remember about it. Again, this doesn't have to be too extensive. And then, say later on, I want to learn more about it. So I find a new article that talks about it more in depth. I do source capture and concept annotation the same way that I did the previous article. I noticed that this article talks about the method having certain principles. So maybe I'll create an HON object for that. And I'll just name it ZM principles and add the principle of atomicity and principle of connectivity. And I also see that the article talks about the building blocks of the Zettelkasten method. So I'll make a new HON object for that too. So there's a relationship between the concept Zettelkasten method and ZM principles, where ZM principles is a concept within the concept Zettelkasten method. If Zettelkasten method is a square, ZM principles is a square within that square. ZM principles is a part, Zettelkasten method is a whole. A tree diagram is also another good way to visualize this. And so the relationship between these two concepts is called a parent-child relationship. ZM principles is a child and Zettelkasten method is a parent. We want to be able to signify this relationship in Obsidian. And this is where your HON template comes in. So I'll go back to Zettelkasten method, the parent, and insert my HON template. Remember the hotkey that we set up? And again, it creates this box. If you put your cursor inside this box, it gives you the hashtag of the HON object. To create this relationship, I'm going to copy this hashtag and paste it into ZM principles, the child. And now, if I go back to my parents, I see that the child is in the box. So, put simply, to create a parent-child relationship, copy and paste the hashtag of the parent into the child. And I can create a parent-child relationship with Zettelkasten method and ZM building blocks too. So to summarize, concept development is about improving your understanding of a concept. Do this by adding definitions, insights, and creating parent-child relationships. Oh, and you can also link other HON objects, but that kind of crosses over into another workflow that we'll talk about a little bit later. Okay, fourth workflow is knowledge navigation. And with this, you don't necessarily add anything new. This is just about traversing your knowledge network to possibly do more of the other workflows, like source capture, concept annotation, concept development, and knowledge synthesis, which again, we'll get to. So to traverse your knowledge network, from your source, you can click on your HON objects. From HON objects, you can click on child HONs or other links within your note. You can also click on backlinks if your HON is connected to other sources. Additionally, if your HON is a child HON to another note, unfortunately, there's not a straightforward way to get to the parent HON. So what I do is just do Command O to search for it. And then finally, Command O is also a good way to get to notes that you know the titles for, or if you don't know the exact titles, search for a related note, and then traverse until you find it. Finally, the last workflow is knowledge synthesis. This is similar to concept development, but on the network level. You're combining information, concepts, relationships, or insights from multiple parts of your knowledge network to create new understanding. So from the Zettelkasten method, I see that this concept is related to the para method, which was talked about in the Obsidian article. So I create a link to that. Then I noticed that these two things are both note taking methods. So I create a new HON called note taking methods and create parent child relationships with Zettelkasten method and para method. And maybe note taking is related to goals because you take notes to achieve goals. And now I have multiple sources that I can draw from to maybe create a new note taking system. Okay, so I want to circle back to source capture because I realize that people aren't just taking notes on articles, and it may be hard sometimes to capture the whole entire source for a whole bunch of reasons. So I want to give some tips on source capturing different mediums. And again, with the disclaimer, this is for personal and educational use only. Follow rules and don't do bad stuff. This tip goes for all mediums. Try to divide them up into sections where you can. Chapter books are easy, or if it's a lecture, divide into topics. With these, you have a couple of options. If you're allowed to, you could copy the whole thing. Copy and pasting PDFs can be tricky, so I either create snapshots or use this app called Text Sniper. Or you could summarize. Or you could put down the link to the article and concept annotate the sections. With ebooks, same thing. Divide into sections and summarize. Or you could divide into sections and provide the link. I personally like Google Play Books because you can add a link to a specific page of where your HON is located. Same thing, divide and summarize, or divide and concept annotate the sections and reference the book later. Or if you really wanted to, you could take photos of the pages with your phone. That's what I did, and it doesn't take as long as you think. Copying and pasting the transcript is probably the easiest, or you could provide the link and put timestamps next to your HONs. This one's a little bit hard. For this, I would either do regular note taking, and there's probably tons of videos out there for note taking strategies, so do that. And on top of that, concept annotate. If you have access to recorded lectures or permission to record lectures, that's probably the easiest. At the beginning of the video, I offered to give you a tool that helps you to find the right path to your goal and turn that walk into a sprint. A tool to help you reach your goals. In other words, the system doesn't just help you reach a single goal, it helps you reach every single goal that you set. Because you don't just want to work out 2 times a week, you also want to own your own fitness gym and make a good impression on your friends' friends and publish a science fiction novel that's actually not that bad. The materials that you need to make progress in one goal also are needed to make progress in other goals. CCKM helps you identify those materials. Okay, so let me give you an example. One overarching goal that I have is to be an expert in neuroscience. Kind of broad, but bear with me. Another goal that I have is to improve CCKM, and the source that it heavily draws from is cognitive psychology. Neuroscience and cognitive psychology differ, but also heavily overlap, and there are a lot of connections to be made. And so right now I'm doing source capture and concept annotation on a cognitive psychology textbook that I read in college. One concept that I identified was the levels of processing theory that says that memory improves when you do things like explain concepts and ideas in your own words and connect them to things you already know. When I do knowledge navigation, when I look at the backlinks of levels of processing theory, I see that this concept was talked about in my neuroscience textbook as well. And a similar concept is right next to it called the self reference effect. The idea that people remember more when they connect concepts and ideas to things they know about themselves. On top of that, there are other related concepts like deep processing, meaning, elaboration, self, that I could navigate to get a better idea of what the levels of processing theory is, while also strengthening my memory on neuroscience related concepts. And if I wanted to, I could go to even more fields to strengthen my understanding. What does philosophy have to say about meaning? What does personality have to say about the self? Actively making these connections all help to strengthen your understanding in the thing that you want to learn more about in this moment, and simultaneously other things too. Put another way, you're hitting 5,000 birds with one stone. Remember, CCKM is a tool. The first step in goal pursuit is to be proactive. Hammer doesn't hit nail by itself. When you use this system, you have to be active, meaning you actually have to put in effort to think. The CCKM architecture is supposed to be a representation of what is in your own mind. To strengthen that architecture, the architecture in your mind, navigate your own knowledge network. Think about concepts and relationships between concepts, like how it's organized in CCKM. I'll have more to say about this in future videos. So mess around with these workflows. Create and expand your own knowledge networks, and use it to learn and solve problems in your own life. I hope this helps. Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed the video. This video was covering a small piece of a single subsystem within the current version of CCKM. Even then, the CCKM system evolves over time, meaning that there is a lot more to go over. If you like learning, fitness, self-improvement, and other stuff like that, I have some other projects that I'm working on that are not CCKM related that I think you would like. So if this video helped you in any way and you would like to see more content, click the like button and subscribe to this channel. I have some other ways to help support the channel in the description. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.